Chapter 1. Divine Book of Heaven. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. At the main altar of Shenyuan sect, Devil Venerable Wenrenha went in seclusion for 7 days, behind tightly closed doors. Every day, the food and the water sent by his subordinates were left untouched, and nobody knew what kind of profound cultivation method he was learning. Altar Master Yuan, who was in charge of the affairs of the altar, was in a dilemma. The Lord had gone in seclusion without leaving any instructions, and he didn't know if the Lord would really have gained a new understanding of the new skills or if his realm would have improved once he opened the door. This celebration. Should it be prepared or not? Devil Venerable Wenrenha was neither extravagant nor wasteful, and he wasn't fond of formalism. However, if the Lord's skills really gained a new level, he should at least ask the disciples to wait for him to go out from the General Assembly Hall and congratulate him on the improvement of his strength, looking forward to the future, when Shenyuan sect would dominate the whole cultivation world. Altar Master Yuan thought about it and finally decided to ask Yin Hanjiang, the left protector of Shenyuan sect, for help. Yin Hanjiang was a confidant of the Lord, and he had been in contact with the Lord before he went in seclusion. He should be the one who knew the thoughts of the other best. Yin Hanjiang, dressed in black from head to toe, with a face as cold as frost, had been guarding the door of the study room for the past 7 days. He was a man of very few words, and after listening to the difficulties of Altar Master Yuan, his indifferent expression appeared a little blank and he looked a bit at a loss. Altar Master Yuan was not tall, so he needed to raise his head to look up at Yin Hanjiang's eyes, waiting for his instructions. Yin Hanjiang moved the corners of his mouth as he spoke, "Not yet." Ah! Altar Master Yuan was stunned. I heard that 7 days ago, when the Lord got a secret book, he immediately went in seclusion. The Lord has not had a breakthrough for many years, and there are few cultivation methods that he hasn't seen yet. Isn't it possible that he is trying to make a breakthrough during this time of seclusion? I said no. Don't do it, Yin Hanjiang said indifferently, and a sharp light shot out from his long sword. Altar Master Yuan didn't dare to ask again and hurriedly retreated. After he left, Yin Hanjiang looked at the closed door behind him, and his indifference transformed into bewilderment. 7 days ago, the Lord did get a book, which others nearby thought was a secret book. Only Yin Hanjiang, who was closest to Wenrenha at that time, caught a glimpse of the title of the book, Abusive Love Affair. You are the only one I will never change. The title almost made Yin Hanjiang grit his teeth. This book did not seem to be any secret cultivation method. Even the erotic scripts written by secular scholars were much more elegant than this title. At that time, Yin Hanjiang thought that Wenrenha would set this mess on fire, but when he opened the first page and glanced at it, he sighed for a long time and then went in seclusion with the book. A mundane book that the Devil Venerable found worthy of reading for 7 days. The longer Yin Hanjiang stayed in front of the Lord's door, the more complicated his mood became. It should be noted that this was the cultivation realm, which was incomparable with the martial arts realm of Wulin and Jianghu. Wulin and Jianghu were places where a group of people who, through practice and doing everything possible to strengthen their bodies, became slightly stronger than ordinary people. No matter how high their internal skills were, they were merely acquired. At best, they had the strength to kill a beast with one punch. On the other hand, the cultivation realm of Shuzhen was one level higher than that of Wulin. The cultivators were separated from the world of mortals and ascended to the realm of immortals in various ways. Their skills were also beyond those acquired by the martial artists in Wulin, which was called the innate state. People in Wulin may yearn for the legend of love, heroes, and beauties, but the cultivation world needed to break away from the worldly affairs, cut off the kinship and follow its own path. In particular, the Devil clan, who practiced by the virtue of men and women's affairs as to not lose one's heart due to their sexual desire and simply wanted to collect and absorb energy, rather than some sentimental love story. Apart from all the ways of killing people, the Lord who had never been interested in men or women, how could he read Abusive Love Affair? You are the only one I will never change for 7 days and 7 nights. He didn't understand, couldn't understand, but Yin Hanjiang was the left protector of the sect and Wenrenhe's most loyal subordinate. He once made an oath that he, Yin Hanjiang, would never let him suffer any harm as long as he was alive. If someone wanted to kill Wenrenhe, he would have to kill Yin Hanjiang first. So even if he knew that the Lord was reading some love story and had not gone in closed-door cultivation, Yin Hanjiang was still holding his sword, silently guarding the door of the study room, not leaving. Behind the door, Wenrenhe put down the book. His hand lay on the cover as if he wanted to smash the book with one hand. His hand trembled slightly, but he finally retracted it and did not destroy the book. He frowned slightly and supported his forehead with his fist. It seemed that he was thinking about an extremely difficult thing. 7 days ago, when he heard that people were discussing with his confidant, Yin Hanjiang, how to beat those righteous cultivators who were shouting and killing people from Shenyuan sect, a thick book suddenly appeared in his hand. At present, Wenrenhe's strength was one of the greatest in the cultivation world, so no one should be able to quietly put a book in his hand without being detected by him, unless it was an immortal from the higher realm. With such vigilance, Wenrenhe did not destroy the book, but endured the title, opened the first page, and saw a few lines of words. Due to excessive plot holes, the plot was not recognized by the readers. Therefore, choose a character with the highest popularity among readers to verify the rationality of the plot, and make appropriate modifications. Because of this sentence, Wenrenhe immediately closed his door and spent 7 days reading the book with more than 1 million words from the beginning to the end, word by word, over and over again. Thanks to his strong divine sense, he could recite it word by word after the first time without reading it ever again, but he still read it all over again and thought about the meaning of each sentence. After reading it for so many days, he still couldn't understand. Every word and sentence he could understand. Even added together, he could imagine pictures and scenes, but he still couldn't understand them. This book was about the entangled love and hatred between a man and a woman that started in their previous lives. In her previous life the female lead was an innate goddess. She had not acquired her godly status through cultivation, but was born from heaven and earth as a goddess responsible for spreading disease, disaster, and death in the world. She sounded like an evil goddess, but in fact it was for the sake of the balance between heaven and earth. Life must lead to death, and death must lead to life. The cycle went on and was never ending. She was absolutely fair and impartial, never targeting a certain race, and spent countless years with no joy or sorrow. After several tens of thousands of years, the innate goddess had fallen, and there were countless acquired gods appearing in the divine realm. These people were the ones who had understood heaven and earth and led heaven and earth into their bodies. After thousands of disasters, they had the same power as the innate goddess and became gods. The male lead was one of them. The male lead was a man who regarded all the people in the world as his duty. After he ascended to the divine realm, he learned that the rare innate goddess, the female lead, was responsible for releasing various disasters. When he was just a mortal, he heard of many natural disasters caused by this woman, so he came to advise the female lead constantly, trying to persuade her to turn over a new leaf. Like heaven and earth, in her previous life the female lead had no feelings. To her, the male lead was no different from the floating clouds in the sky, or the stones on the ground. He was just like a fly or an insect buzzing near her ear. At most, she quarreled a bit and then blocked the speech ability of the male lead with her skills and threw him beyond the 30.3 heavens. However, the male lead persisted and crawled back every time. After he had lifted the silencing spell, he continued to persuade the female lead to think for her own life. Thus, many years later, the fate of the female lead came to be. Even heaven and earth had to experience the 3 disasters of wind, water, and fire, and they would be destroyed and reborn countless times. So the female lead accepted her fate and bravely faced the calamity. When the calamity occurred, the male lead came again. The disaster caused by the innate deity was extremely terrible. The female lead knew that she would die this time. Only by preserving her godly soul, reincarnating, and enlightening on the road, did she have a chance to live. Therefore, she stripped off her divinity before the calamity, and sealed it up in the cultivation world. When she gained divinity in the future, she could regain her strength and return to the divine realm. At the time of the tribulation, when the female lead was about to start her physical reincarnation, the male lead appeared to help her withstand the thunder calamity. Taking part of the calamity for her, both of them were reincarnated. Somehow, the female lead got entangled with the male lead. After reincarnation, the naive female lead, after paying her respects to the sect master, saw the senior disciple of the sect and had a feeling of being struck by lightning at the first sight of him. When Renha analyzed the effect of the lightning strike according to the description in the book, that one look made her whole body numb and crisp, she couldn't move her eyes away and couldn't move her feet. As a person who had never experienced love, when Renha thought this kind of symptoms could only be produced by lightning strikes. At first sight, the female lead fell in love with the male lead. The female lead named Bailey Qingmiao was in love with her eldest senior brother He Wenchao. This triggered a period of mistreatment, but the female lead did not regret her infatuation. In the end, she gave up her divinity for He Wenchao. A story of an abusive love, wholeheartedly wishing for the life of an affectionate couple without any envy for immortal life. To sum it up, the specific plot was as follows. Framing, misunderstanding, Bailey Qingmiao being imprisoned, abused, poisoned, hunted down, and He Wenchao getting married, but the bride was not her. Several important supporting characters were devoted to Bailey Qingmiao and took care of her. However, Bailey Qingmiao only liked He Wenchao and ignored the good deeds of others, only wishing to be with He Wenchao. After being hurt and injured by He Wenchao, his wife, suitors, and her own family, she was rescued by other supporting male characters. After the wounds were healed, she continued to come back to be abused. This plot was written in more than 800,000 words, and he was almost fascinated by it. If Bailey Qingmiao appeared in front of him at this moment, he would crack open her human skull to see what was going on in her head. When he reached the last page, it was no longer the plot, but some extraordinarily pleasing words, which were called book reviews, and most of the book reviews were, "The female lead is sick, right? She gave up immortality for such a second marriage scum man. Garbage." After reading almost 1 million words, waiting for the female lead to get back at this scum, she turned out to be so cheap until the end. He Wenchao loves the female lead, but his life is more important than the female lead. His teacher is more important than the female lead, the innocent people are more important than the female lead, and everything else is more important than the female lead. The female lead is the existence He Wenchao can abandon at any time. This love is too humble to be embraced. He Wenchao has killed the female lead in 2 lifetimes. The innate goddess is different from He Wenchao, who acquired the values of both a god and a man. Releasing the disaster was not only her duty but also had the purpose to balance the ways of heaven. He forced others to favor the human race and also interfered with the female lead in her tribulation, making the female lead entangled with him in the next life. This man is so terrible, that he abused and killed the female lead in the name of righteousness. Love at first sight can be said to be the karma from their previous life, but why is this karma not so important to this He Wenchao? On the contrary, did he even care if Bailey Qingmiao is dying? He Wenchao could marry the leader of Xiling Pavilion, so don't tell me Bailey Qingmiao cannot marry Zhong Liqian or Wen Renha. Is the heir of Shuzhen's first aristocratic family not handsome enough, or is the Devil Venerable not cool enough? Why hang herself on He Wenchao? Wen Renha was the only driving force for me to read these almost 1 million words. I just wanted to see him tear this man off or kill this woman. Wen Renha, Zhong Liqian, and Yin Hanjiang are all better than He Wenchao. This woman is blind. However, I think we'd better pass on Yin Hanjiang. He is too scary. Cross out Yin Hanjiang. I will have a nightmare if I see his name now. Cross out +1, we'd better depend on Wen Renha. In the reviews, the familiar names of Wan Renhe, Yin Hanjiang, Zhong Liqian, and others appeared repeatedly, which was also the reason why he persevered in reading this book with patience. Wan Renhe knew that the character in this book was really himself. As described in the text at the beginning of the book, Wan Renhe was the infatuated and domineering second male lead in abusive love affair. You are the only one I will never change, and their world was just the fictional story in this book. After learning the truth about the world, most of the practitioners would be traumatized and either live passively in the future or go crazy with madness. Wan Renhe was also in trance for a while, but fortunately, the experience gained from killing had made his mentality extremely strong. He soon realized that this cultivation world was just one of thousands of worlds. Others only saw their world as a book, but abusive love affair. You are the only one I will never change was only a record of the love and hatred of a few dozens of people. The places not described in the book were worlds of their own. This book was just a record of the story of a certain person from a certain era and not of the whole world. It was enough to know that you were truly alive and that your thoughts and actions were not controlled by anyone, and that the world was real. What really puzzled Wan Renhe was that in the book it was said he would fall in love with Bailey Qingmiao in the future, fight against heaven and earth for her, and that he would give up his life for her, which made the heartless Wan Renhe very puzzled. Just by reading this book, he wanted to pull Bailey Qingmiao's soul out of the book and make her forget her feelings for He Wenchao. How could he risk his life helping He Wenchao in order to protect Bailey Qingmiao? Thinking like this, he knew that if he didn't understand these things clearly, sooner or later, he would be possessed by evil spirits and be unable to continue his cultivation path. Even if it wasn't for the task at the beginning of the book, just to stabilize his mind, it was time to solve it. After 3 days of meditation, he made up his mind to find out why Bailey Qingmiao was so brain dead. Indeed, he couldn't figure out by himself why she became infatuated. Bailey Qingmiao may be confused herself. After all, she had been struck by lightning, and there might be something abnormal in her brain. However, other people mentioned in this book, especially Bailey Qingmiao's love rivals, probably understood. After all, they also liked He Wenchao, and they fought to death for him. If one person's strength was not enough, then find more people. You could always get the answer if you asked enough questions. After understanding the crux of the problem, the difficulty of changing the plot would also be reduced. After making a decision, Wan Renhe pushed the door open, and Yin Hanjiang, who was guarding the door, saw his lord go out. Putting his long sword on the ground, he knelt on one knee and waited quietly for his orders. Wan Renhe looked at his most trusted left protector and recalled Yin Hanjiang's existence in the plot, then began by saying, "Protector Yin, your love for. Forget it." After saying these few words only, he thought of Yin Hanjiang's creepy behavior in the plot and didn't want to ask anymore. Yin Hanjiang probably didn't know anything about love either. Edited by Rose Proofreader. Talia. Chapter 2.1. The Witch of Shenyuan Sect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yin Hanjiang heard the unfinished words and understood that Devil Venerable Wan Renhe mainly wanted to ask him what he thought of love. To be honest, Yin Hanjiang didn't understand it either. When he was young, he was picked up by the Lord and brought back to Shenyuan Sect from the graveyard. He always followed the Lord's orders and never expressed his subjective opinion. Although Wan Renhe's words remained unspoken, he lowered his head and said, "The Lord's preference is this subordinate's belief." If his lord liked reading the script, Yin Hanjiang would collect all scripts in this world. If the lord liked women or men, Yin Hanjiang would bring for his lord all the people he liked. The lord's order was Yin Hanjiang's command. Wan Renhe gazed at Yin Hanjiang, who was kneeling on one knee in front of him, and recalled the plot that filled his mind these days. According to the plot in the book, Yin Hanjiang did exactly what he said just now. Yin Hanjiang, in abusive love affair. You are the only one I will never change, as the fourth male lead, was the second male lead, Wan Renhe's trusted aide, with habitually silent temperament, docile and obedient towards Bailey Qingmiao. Wan Renhe liked Bailey Qingmiao, so when he couldn't take care of her, he would send Yin Hanjiang to protect her. Yin Hanjiang was beaten, poisoned, injured and even nearly lost his life for Bailey Qingmiao, without even a word of complaint. He didn't even reveal his feelings for Bailey Qingmiao. The most explicit thing he said was during the crisis. Yin Hanjiang let Bailey Qingmiao escape first and said in a hoarse voice, "If I live, you live. But if I die, you will still live." Which girl could resist such a loyal, handsome man who showed his love through his actions? In the early stage of the novel, Yan Hanjiang was even more popular than Wen Renhe. Even Bailey Qingmiao, who was hanging on He Wenchao, said with tears that she would forever owe him her life and would never be able to pay him back. All readers, including Wen Renhe, who read this book, thought that Yin Hanjiang was deeply in love with Bailey Qingmiao. Who would have thought that when he heard of Wen Renhe dying for Bailey Qingmiao, Yin Hanjiang, recalling what he had read in the plot 4 to 5 times over and over again, he asked, "You are loyal and devoted when this lord is here. But what if one day this lord is gone?" Hearing Wen Renhe's words, Yin Hanjiang's body shook and his arm on the ground trembled slightly. It seemed that the mere thought of the possibility that Wen Renhe would die made it difficult for him to bear. Yin Hanjiang was unwilling to think about the possibility of him dying, but when he was asked this question, he forced himself to think about it. However, after a long time, Yin Hanjiang's forehead was full of cold sweat, which obviously showed he was pushing himself to the extreme. After a long time, he squeezed out the answer from between his teeth, "This subordinate will die before the Lord." Hearing it, Wen Renhe pulled his sleeve and inadvertently wiped off the cold sweat from Yin Hanjiang's forehead. His actions were very gentle, but his words were very merciless. "If this lord has an unfinished matter, would you be allowed to die?" Yin Hanjiang's pupils trembled and his posture changed from kneeling on one knee to kneeling on both knees. His palms pressed to the ground as he bowed his head deeply and said, "This subordinate doesn't know." He didn't know, but Wen Renhe knew. In the book, before Wen Renhe died, he ordered Yin Hanjiang to protect Bailey Qingmiao. In the book, Wen Renhe thought that Yin Hanjiang also liked Bailey Qingmiao and would be able to take his place and protect her well. Yin Hanjiang did it and stood by and kept following Bailey Qingmiao closely. At the same time in the plot inexplicably appeared Ghostface. He was everywhere, using every means to injure Bailey Qingmiao. When Bailey Qingmiao was wounded, he sprinkled bone powder on her wound. When Bailey Qingmiao was unconscious, he threw her into the cave of 10,000 snakes. When Bailey Qingmiao was alone, he set up an oil pan to refine oil from Bailey Qingmiao. With every appearance, Ghostface's perversion escalated. Readers had been guessing Ghostface was a malicious female supporting character in disguise. Although the description in the book stated it was a man, it was not difficult for women to disguise as a man by wearing men's clothes. Unexpectedly, one time, when Bailey Qingmiao and Yin Hanjiang were hunted by Ghostface and hid in the cave, Bailey Qingmiao said softly, "Brother Yin, luckily there's you by my side." "Really?" Yin Hanjiang asked. Bailey Qingmiao was extremely tired as she leaned against his back and was about to fall asleep when a corner of the package Yin Hanjiang had been holding was revealed. She looked at it intently and it was the ghost mask that had woken her up from nightmares countless times. After Wen Renhe's death, Yin Hanjiang finally did something against his orders. He wanted Bailey Qingmiao to suffer all kinds of torture and die. He wanted Bailey Qingmiao to be buried and made into an everlasting soul lamp which burned day and night for Wen Renhe to illuminate the road as he passed by. His previous care was not because of his admiration for Bailey Qingmiao, but because he was asked to do so by Wen Renhe, so he put Bailey Qingmiao's safety to his heart. When he heard that his lord died because of Bailey Qingmiao, he only wanted to hack this woman in thousands of pieces. While reading the book, Wen Renhe didn't understand Yin Hanjiang's way of thinking. Only after asking was he able to understand Yin Hanjiang's pain. The first difficult problem from the book was finally solved. "Come on, stand up," said Wen Renhe. Yin Hanjiang got up steadily after rubbing his right sleeve on the side of his lips. When Renha grabbed his right arm and his nose caught a trace of bloody smell at the cuff. Being forced to imagine the Devil Venerable's death made Yin Hanjiang very miserable. When Renha, who had witnessed plenty of massacres and suffering, was also somewhat moved. At this moment, when Renha was not as deeply in love as he was in the book, so he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with what Yin Hanjiang did. The people who followed the devil path were not so selfless. If you can't have it, destroy it. It was extremely normal for them to take others with them to the grave. He just wanted to say to Yin Hanjiang in the book, well done. Incidentally, the Devil Venerable could be beaten in the book, just like the female lead with brain problems. It was absolutely impossible for Wen Renha to accept that he too had abandoned everything for the sake of love. Why would he fall deep into it, unable to extricate himself? Why did Bailey Qingmiao like He Wenchao so much that she lost herself and was willing to be with him after being harmed countless times? Why did the malicious female supporting characters in the book frame an innocent woman for He Wenchao? There were too many things that Wen Renha didn't understand. Yin Hanjiang answered a question for him, but there were more questions awaiting for the Devil Venerable to understand. Wen Renha placed his palm on Yin Hanjiang's chest and injected some genuine qi to heal him. Yin Hanjiang didn't resist and allowed Wen Renha's overbearing genuine qi to enter his dantian to help him suppress his soul force, which was restless because of his unstable state of mind. After his treatment of Yin Hanjiang was completed smoothly, Wen Renha instructed, order the right protector to come to the council hall. Edited by Rose Proofreader. Talia. Chapter 2.2. The Witch of Shenyuan Sect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yin Hanjiang obeyed his command, took out the Lord's command seal, and summoned the right protector. After the two men came to the council hall and waited for a while, a woman wearing purple walked in slowly. It seemed as if she was wearing clothes, but in fact, it was nothing more than purple gauze wrapped around her body. What should be covered wasn't covered much, but instead it appeared more beautiful and aroused men's fantasies. However, both of them were cold-hearted blind men. Xu Yanyan, the right protector, had long been accustomed to their reaction and made an enchanting gesture of greeting to the Lord. When she got permission to get up, she impatiently asked, "My lord, do you want to go down the mountain to attack those righteous hypocrites?" This subordinate is already itching to get on with it. With that, she covered her mouth and smiled shyly. Wen Renha, who knew his subordinates well, said in a deep voice, "Are you truly so eager to give those hypocrites a lesson, or is it that you can't wait for their yang to fill your yin? Isn't that the same thing?" Xu Yanyan blinked at Wen Renha. "My lord, you know me, it's best to follow the way of the heart. As long as the matter can be completed in both respects, I will not let it slip." Wen Renha then raised his hand, and Xu Yanyan got permission to take a seat on his right-hand side. She stretched her long legs lazily, her every movement exuding irresistible feminine charm. Wen Renha ignored the charm released by the right protector and slowly asked, "Do you know He Wenchao, the senior disciple of Shangqing sect?" "You meant him. Then I may be interested." Xu Yanyan sat in an unoccupied seat, slumped lazily and supported her cheek with one hand while blinking. "My lord, weren't you the one who ordered me to go down the mountain 3 months ago to investigate the righteous path? I disguised myself as an ordinary but lovely and pitiful lady singer and pretended to be bullied by the young disciples of Shangqing sect in a restaurant. It was He Wenchao who helped me." This man, speaking of this, Xu Yanyan licked her lower lip, as if savoring an aftertaste. It took a moment before she came to her senses and continued, "His yang qi was abundant." What she was thinking, Wen Renha was perfectly clear on. In the book, He Wenchao's yang qi was indeed absorbed by Xu Yanyan. At that time, Xu Yanyan's cultivation was greatly reduced, so she locked him in her residence and almost emptied him. In the end, Bailey Qingmiao went as far as to brave death to rescue He Wenchao. In order to replenish his qi essence, she went to the ice field of Wanli to find the snow flame elixir and then helped He Wenchao absorb it. Xu Yanyan was the first vicious girl in the early stage of the plot. She didn't like Yuan Chao but was simply greedy for his yang qi, which made her act like a demon. It was precisely because Xu Yanyan was a bad person and harmed Yuan Chao that Bailey Qingmiao forgave him the first time for having a relationship with another woman. The witch of Shenyuan's sect practiced the charm cultivation method, and Xu Yanyan's cultivation was much higher than that of Yuan Chao. If she wanted to do something, Yuan Chao couldn't resist at all, so he was a victim. At that time, Bailey Qingmiao didn't know that after the first time there would be a second time, and in the future, there would be countless times when Yuan Chao was forced and expected her to understand. Tell me more about the situation at that time, Wen Renhe said. According to the total number of words in the book, currently, the plot should only have progressed to about 70,000 or 80,000 words, which was also the only sweet section throughout the whole text. Bailey Qingmiao joined Shangqing's sect and fell in love at first sight with Yuan Chao. Having cultivated for over 10 years in the sect, both of them could be considered childhood friends that grew up together, and Yuan Chao took very good care of his younger martial sister. Going behind the sect's back, they would sneak off to the back of the mountain in the middle of the night to practice their martial arts skills amidst the flowers under the moon. Their feelings of affection and love expressed through their actions seemed to seep into the hearts of others like honey. It was so sweet that it caused others to feel toothache. During this period, there were several female disciples from the same sect who were throwing a tantrum. However, at that time, everyone was young and innocent, so they did nothing that would have gone out of line. Yuan Chao was also a young hero, the most pampered and favored son of heaven in the sect, and did not shoulder the burden of the sect yet. Xu Yanyan, the witch, was the first conflict between them. Who is still able to remember so much? I am just thinking about that youngster's yang qi. My lord should be aware that my cultivation has remained stagnant for many years, and if it goes on like this, my skin will start to wrinkle. While she spoke, Xu Yanyan took out a mirror and looked at her young maiden face. Only then did she continue with satisfaction, Yuan Chao's yang qi is unusual. He has a thunder spiritual root and has the power of thunder and fire. Not only that, it seems like there is a mysterious power hidden within him. I have always felt that if I were to absorb his power, I would certainly be able to improve my power. For cultivators, there were 5 kinds of common spiritual roots, namely metal, wood, water, fire and earth, and 5 kinds of variant spiritual roots, which consisted of wind, thunder, ice, light and darkness. Common people usually had 3, 4 or even 5 mixed spiritual roots, whereas double spiritual roots, in the cultivation realm, were considered to have superior qualifications. A single common spiritual root occurred in 1 out of 1,000, while a variant spiritual root was even rarer. Yuan Chao had a thunder spiritual root. Had the spiritual root been created before his reincarnation by the thunder strike of the heavenly tribulation? Wen Renhe muttered to himself. That mysterious power was naturally a divine power. Yuan Chao's previous life was that of a man who acquired godhood through cultivation and reincarnated along with his postnatal godly personality. Bailey Qingmiao was an innate goddess who was born from heaven and earth. Her character couldn't follow her into the body of an ordinary person, but Yuan Chao's divine character could. If Xu Yanyan absorbed Yuan Chao's yang qi, relying on his divine power, she could indeed greatly increase her power. Why didn't you kill him 3 months ago? His strength should be inferior to yours, Wen Renhe asked. Well, Xu Yanyan sighed, I did consider attacking, but his power is very special. If he wasn't willing to be friends with me, I couldn't force him. He has a sweetheart, who is a little girl whose looks are by no means inferior to mine. This little girl is very sharp though, as she constantly suspects me and keeps a close eye on her lover, so she didn't give me a chance at all. Oh. Wen Renhe raised his eyebrows slightly. He must be willing. This was not mentioned in the book since it was written from Bailey Qingmiao's perspective. Yuan Chao told her that he had been abducted by Xu Yanyan, and Bailey Qingmiao believed him. My lord, you still don't know me, asked Xu Yanyan coquettishly. When it comes to this matter, I am most particular about mutual consent. If those men perform a little better and try to please me, I will even supplement some purine that they have lost during their cultivation. Apart from the enemy, which of those little sweethearts in my family hasn't tasted the sweetness? Those that I'm tired of, even if I were to try to drive them away, they wouldn't even want to leave. I don't really know. It seems that there are still many things I didn't know about, Wen Renhe thought to himself. Nevertheless, I won't let He Wenchao off so easily. Xu Yanyan expressed her loyalty to Wen Renhe. Their Shangqing sect is the mastermind behind the attack on Shenyuan sect. How can I show mercy to the enemy's senior disciple? Lord, you can rest assured. I have taken up the role of a miserable girl, and He Wenchao has been going behind Bailey Qingmiao's back for some time now, so that he can communicate with me. He pities me, and would often secretly go down the mountain to help his subordinates. Sooner or later, I will get my hands on him. He pondered for a moment and then said, No, there is no need for that. There is no need for what? Xu Yanyan blinked her beautiful big eyes. There is no need to destroy this man, Wen Renhe said, tapping his fingers on the armrest of his seat. Just do as you normally would. Having plans to ensure that you'll be able to come and go safely pays off in the long run. There is indeed a special power in his body which is very beneficial to you, but there is no need to go to such extremes. Ha! Xu Yanyan was stunned. Was this still her lord who would exterminate his enemies and never show them any mercy? She knitted her brows. He is the most favored senior disciple of Shangqing sect, the pillar of the righteous path. If we don't destroy him while he is still young, won't he give us trouble in the future? If I were to feed him back during cultivation, his cultivation would improve even faster. Even if it is good for me, it will not be good for Shenyuan sect. As Xu Yanyan spoke, her expression became cruel and fierce, without even a hint of her previous lovable, soft and charming appearance. Her words greatly pleased Wen Renhe. From Wen Renhe's point of view, this was what a cultivator should look like. This path was emotionless. Rather than greed and love, it would be better to gain benefits. Moreover, cultivators had to be firm in their standpoint, and simply couldn't nurture a tiger to invite calamity out of soft-heartedness. To indulge one's enemy is asking for trouble. Looking at Xu Yanyan's awareness and Yin Hanjiang's actions, then recalling falling in love and giving up Shenyuan sect just for Bailey Qingmiao in the book, Wen Renhe deeply felt that he was not as good as his two sect protectors. Any ordinary person would reckon it would be best to stay away from Bailey Qingmiao in the future, so as to not get caught up too deeply in it. However, Wen Renhe had a character of facing difficulties head-on. He had to meet Bai Qingmiao and He Wenchao cold-heartedly and by no means be moved by love. Thinking about this, he ordered, Xu Yanyan, you must look at this matter long-term and you have to act as a saboteur. Xu Yanyan pondered for a moment and then lightly clapped her hands as her eyes lit up. My lord, your subordinate understands what you mean. What I should do is to entice the future pillar of the righteous path in some pitiful manner, refine the well-tempered steel to wrap it around my fingers. To have him believe I am a good woman who is physically with the devil path, but internally sides with the righteous path. To have him be obsessed with me, obsessed with my beauty and obsessed with the power I can bring him. This way, there will come a day when I will need him to save me and he will disclose some sect information that he deems unimportant to me. It would be even better if he becomes the sect leader in the future. He could be lured into the devil path little by little, until he is stuck so deeply that he can't extricate himself. The more Xu Yanyan spoke, the more excited she became. She would be going down the mountain to play the role of a weak girl. Casting a long line to catch a big fish was the right way to go. Wen Renhe. He had only wanted to let Bailey Qingmiao see clearly that He Wenchao was willing to be with Xu Yanyan, so he had Xu Yanyan entice He Wenchao. Who would have known that Xu Yanyan thought so much deeper than him, making the trivial affair between a man and a woman develop into a significant matter involving a war between both the devil and the righteous path. His right protector was really a woman with great ambitions. Wen Renha wasn't even aware of it in the past. Your plan is feasible. Be sure to keep these 2 points in mind. Firstly, don't harm Bailey Qingmiao. Secondly, you mustn't fall in love, Wen Renha instructed. My lord is so far-sighted. Keeping Bailey Qingmiao and letting her act willfully will instead push He Wenchao towards my obedient self. Keeping her is definitely more useful than killing her, Xu Yanyan agreed and continued. As for He Wenchao, my lord, please rest assured, this subordinate has the experience of 100 battles under her belt and has long been able to see through the hypocrisy of noblemen in this world. Once Xu Yanyan finished speaking, she turned to leave the council hall, showing her slender back to the 2 silent men. Sect Protector Yin, after a long while, when Renha started speaking. This lord is not as good as the right protector that he was referring to himself in the book. Yin Hanjiang said, my lord is the wisest and most far-sighted person in the world. The right protector is not as good as 1,000th of you. You, when Renha shook his head and changed the topic, follow me down the mountain. I want to meet some of these juniors from Shangqing sect. He wanted to see how He Wenchao would explain it to Bailey Qingmiao when Xu Yanyan didn't suck him dry this time. Also, if the female lead would follow the original plot and forgive He Wenchao. This Devil Venerable was just so full of curiosity. Edited by Rose Proofreader. Talia. Chapter 3.1. So that's what it was. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Genuine cultivators tapped into the power of heaven and earth to travel thousands of miles in a flash, so in only half a day's time, they arrived in a small town near Shangqing sect. When Renha had even reduced his speed in order to wait for Yin Hanjing, otherwise he would have arrived within a quarter of an hour. In this world, the realm of cultivators could be divided into 9 stages. Qi enlightenment, Qi refinement, foundation building, golden core, nascent soul, soul transformation, soul combination, void stage and Mahayana. Each stage was further divided into another 9 layers. Breaking through the 9th layer of Mahayana, a heavenly tribulation would occur and then the cultivator would cross over into the immortal realm. It was said that there were realms such as scattered immortal, heavenly immortal, golden immortal, great principle golden immortal, immortal lord, and immortal emperor in the immortal realm. Once a cultivator broke through the immortal emperor realm, they would cross over into the divine realm. The divine realm was also divided into countless stages, but no matter how acquired gods cultivated, it would be impossible for them to surpass the innate gods. Innate gods coexisted with heaven and earth, whereas acquired gods could only tap into the powers of heaven and earth. The former regarded heaven and earth as their home, while the latter could be regarded as temporarily residing on heaven and earth. All in all, it did make a massive difference. Devil Venerable Wen Renha had already been officially recognized as the top cultivator of the Devil Path, but his current cultivation was only at the 6th layer of Mahayana. The female lead in her previous life had been many times stronger than all the people who appeared in the book. However, in order to follow He Wenchao, she had given up her divinity. It was no surprise that when Renha thought she had a few screws loose somewhere. He even suspected that He Wenchao had used some devilry to control the spirit of the female lead, but in the genuine cultivation world such sorcery, no matter how strong it was, would be useless on Bailey Qingmiao, whose divinity had already infused her body. It was like a drop of venom dissolving into the ocean, a wisp of poisonous smoke being pulled into the storm. Being put against a much stronger force, all sorts of sorcery would simply be useless. When Renha was sitting on the 2nd floor of the tea house and sipping on the tea Yin Hanjiang had served him, as he furrowed his brows deep in thought. This subordinate is low in cultivation and has wasted the Lord's time. Yin Hanjiang did not sit down and just stood behind Wen Renha. It doesn't matter, Wen Renha said, pointing to the seat next to him. Sit down. Yin Hanjiang then obediently sat down beside Wen Renha. If his lord hadn't ordered it, he would not have sat down. If his lord gave the order, he would not say hypocritically, your subordinate doesn't dare. Under Wen Renha's command, even if he didn't dare to, Yin Hanjiang would still do as ordered. When Renha noticed that Yin Hanjiang was all rigid, he ordered, act more naturally and normalize your breathing. Both of us are now just martial artists who know a little bit about cultivation. For every instruction he gave, Yin Hanjiang only made a movement. The previously stiff back gradually relaxed, only leaving his muscles taut. Yin Hanjiang seldom had eye contact with Renha, to the point where he practically did not lift his head up. He just held a teacup in his hands and stared at the tea, which gave a light fragrance, but did not take a sip. Like a wooden marionette, he did not have any thoughts of his own. He only moved each time Renha said something. Yin Hanjiang's cultivation was only at the first layer of soul combination, but in Xianyuan's sect he had thousands under his command. The weakest out of the four major altar masters, Yuan Tanzhu, was at the 9th layer of soul combination, while the other 3 masters were at the peak of the void stage. The right protector, Shu Yanyan, was at the 6th layer of the void stage. Amongst the 6 who worked directly under Renha, Yin Hanjiang was the weakest. Technically, he, in any case, should not have been a left protector. It was only due to his utmost loyalty and Renha's trust in him, that he was able to attain such a high position. When Renha found him in a pile of corpses, Yin Hanjiang was barely alive. He had been poisoned and half of his body was festering badly. No one would have regarded him as a living person, and even if they knew he was still breathing, no one would have saved him. It just so happened that when Renha was passing by, with his keen sense of life and death, he found the dull-eyed Yin Hanjiang, who was quietly waiting to die. At that time, when Renha, who was still a master of a small sect of the Devil Path, used the tip of his toes to kick Yin Hanjian's body, then looked down at that child to say emotionlessly, "I need a sword." Little Yin Hanjiang raised his little arms to grab Renha's shoes with such strength no one knew where it came from. Ever since then, Yin Hanjiang had become an emotionless sword, only for Renha to brandish. His cultivation had been developing at a rapid pace. In just a decade, he had advanced to the soul combination stage, which was even several times faster than Renha. Who would have known that after reaching the soul combination stage, no matter how hard Yin Hanjiang practiced, he just couldn't advance any further. Hence, his realm had remained stagnant for 100 years. When Renha initially thought that Yin Hanjiang had reached his peak when he had advanced to soul combination, but the book clearly stated that Ghostface's cultivation was at the peak of Mahayana. This was also one of the reasons why the female lead never guessed that Yin Hanjiang was Ghostface. Firstly, in the beginning, Yin Hanjiang had been so kind to her, that she wouldn't have doubted him at all. Secondly, even though Yin Hanjiang had gained some luck from protecting the female lead, his cultivation was clearly at the first layer of soul combination. Hence, who would have guessed that Ghostface, whose cultivation was at Mahayana, was Yin Hanjiang? At the later stage of this abusive love story, Ghostface was already the most powerful person in the cultivation world. If it was not for his obsession with using Beili Qingmiao for refinement, he would have long been able to break through and cross over into the immortal realm. Beili Qingmiao had really been thrown into a cauldron by Ghostface for refinement. It was a wonder how lucky she had been, as she had managed to fuse with her divinity right at the most critical moment, causing a terrible force to break out, which had then killed Yin Hanjiang instantaneously. Yin Hanjiang was at soul combination stage, but Ghostface was at Mahayana stage. There was a difference of 2 realms between both of them. When Renha looked at the side profile of his most trusted subordinate and said, "Hold out your hand." Yin Hanjiang held out his hand. When Renha then locked onto the meridian point on his wrist and transferred some true qi into his body, straight to the meridian point in his heart. After a round of examination, he was certain that Yin Hanjiang really was at the first layer of soul combination, without any adulteration. In addition, there was a massive amount of unconvertible soul force in his dantian, which remained there after cultivating for 100 years. It must have been for breaking through the cultivation realm, that he had forcefully accommodated this unbearable soul force there. It must have been really painful. If it wasn't for that book, it would have been impossible for Wen Renhe to understand Yin Hanjiang's situation, and he would have deemed Yin Hanjiang as not having enough talent. Apparently there were still many seemingly bizarre plot points in the book, but in actual fact there were reasonable explanations behind them all. How long has it been like this? Wen Renhe asked. Yin Hanjiang did not answer the question but instead said, "This subordinate will try his best to break through." Looking at him like this, some distant memories appeared in his mind. After he had brought Yin Hanjiang back to his sect, he had solely focused on defeating the rival sect, so he had just thrown him into the sect to be raised and casually left a cultivation method for Yin Hanjiang to practice on his own. 10 years later, he returned to the sect and found that Yin Hanjiang had grown into a tall straight young man, who would swing his sword again and again at the back of the mountain. Ever since Wen Renhe had left Yin Hanjiang with the task of cleaving the waterfall apart with his sword 10 years ago, he had been practicing it for the past 10 years. Persistence, firmness, and loyalty. These 3 words were enough to describe Yin Hanjiang. "Don't push yourself too hard," said Wen Renhe. "Just take your time. This lord is strong enough." He thought this was a consolation, but who would have known that a trace of abandonment and grief would flash through Yin Hanjiang's eyes as he asked hoarsely, "Does the Lord no longer need this subordinate?" Actually, he was not really needed. At that time, when Renhe wanted to unify the demon path, so there was an urgent need for talents. Now that Xianyuan sect's power had increased, the entire devil path had been coerced into submission by Wen Renhe. The 4 major altar masters, as well as the left and the right protectors of the sect, were all very loyal to Wen Renhe. Hence, he did not need someone, who was only at soul combination stage, to protect him. This sword, Yin Hanjiang, had no chance to be unsheathed. Wen Renhe did not answer his question, but instead took out a book that was even thicker than a brick from his Qiankuan sleeve and flipped to a certain page. It was the point where Yin Hanjiang was protecting Beili Qingmiao from the pursuit of Shangqing sect. She said gratefully, "Brother Yin, you are too good to me." As Yin Hanjiang held his sword in his hands, the firelight revealed his smile. He said, "You are the Lord's only one who requires a protector." At first glance, one would have thought that Yin Hanjiang was using his loyalty as an excuse to hide the feelings for Beili Qingmiao in his heart. When Wen Renhe looked at it again, he noticed the word sword. Wen Renhe had left this sword, Yin Hanjiang, idle for far too long now. To ensure Beili Qingmiao's safety, he had decided to use this sword again. Why was Yin Hanjiang smiling? It was not due to him liking Beili Qingmiao, but because he was once again needed by Wen Renhe. Wen Renhe put the book away and once again looked at Yin Hanjiang. An unfamiliar slightly sour feeling arose in his heart. "This lord doesn't need a sword," he said coldly. Yin Hanjiang's eyes gradually became lifeless, as he withdrew his hand from the table and firmly grasped the sword on his waist. In the book, the phrase, "holding a sword," was used numerous times to describe Yin Hanjiang's actions. When cultivators reached the foundation building stage, they would be able to put away their soul-bound weapons in their body. Even at Qi refinement stage, there were storage devices such as Qiankuan, heaven and earth, bags, so there was no need for cultivators to hold their weapons in their hands. However, Yin Hanjiang was always holding his sword. When Renhe didn't know, his eyes had softened, as he continued, "But this lord still needs Yin Hanjiang." Yin Hanjiang loosened his grip on the sword in his hand as he heard Wen Renhe say, "When this lord first got to know Yin Hanjiang, this lord's name was not widely known yet. This lord didn't trust anyone in this world but Yin Hanjiang. My lord, Mahayana, https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Mahayana Qiankuan sleeve modified to hold larger items. Edited by Rose Proofreader. Talia. Chapter 3.2. So that's what it was. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before Yin Hanjiang could finish speaking, he was interrupted by a woman, who was wearing a thin white dress, with a lute in her arms, walking up to the second floor while singing and playing the lute. Wen Renhe. Yin Hanjiang. This woman was actually Xu Yanyan. They were used to her wearing revealing clothing and just couldn't get used to this new woeful look, as if she was a little white lotus trembling in the wind. There were quite a number of guests sitting on the second floor. Xu Yanyan was a singer at the tea house and began selling flowers once she finished a song. She had taken the path of being self-reliant and independent. She did not charge for singing, but she would start selling flowers after her performance. The income from selling flowers would still be split between her and the owner of the tea house, whereby 70% would go to the owner of the tea house and the remaining 30% would go to her. It was indeed very pitiful. Ren Wenha held 12 silver taels between his fingers and casually them into the flower basket that was right in front of Xu Yanyan. With her basket in hand, she walked slowly to Wen Renhe and whispered, "This guest, this little lady doesn't sing for a living, but does sell flowers. A basket of flowers only costs 10 copper coins. You don't need to spend so much money." There were 10 baskets of flowers at her feet. After selling all of them and passing the boss his share, she would only be left with 30 copper coins for herself. She would only be able to have some meat to eat after saving up for half a month, whereas for the rest of the days, she would have to spend them eating only steamed buns. Wen Renhe did not turn to look at Xu Yanyan, but he squinted his eyes at Yin Hanjiang and whispered, "Call me big brother." Yin Hanjiang looked dazed like he was still dreaming. Following the script given to him by Wen Renhe, he recited the lines emotionlessly, My big brother told you to accept it, so you'll accept it. Don't be so unappreciative of others." The moment the words, "Big brother," came out of Yin Hanjing's mouth, his ears became all red. "Thank you both for your kindness, but I shouldn't take your money. This little lady won't accept it." Xu Yanyan extended her long, cold fingers to take out the silver from her flower basket, placed it on the table and then politely bid them goodbye. Technically, Wen Renhe could have thrown the silver back into Xu Yanyan's lapel saying, "If you dare to take the tails out in front of everyone, I will take it back," and make her cry helplessly at the tea house. However, this was not his forte and Yin Hanjiang was not interested in doing so. Hence, they could only drink tea in silence, ignoring Xu Yanyan. When Xu Yanyan saw that they did not react, she became a little anxious. If they were not going to bully her, then how was she supposed to continue acting? She had already made arrangements for her subordinates to act out this play. Who would have thought that her lord had come to watch the show, so she ordered her subordinates to wait for her orders and passed the highlight of the show to her lord to perform. She thought that men were scoundrels by nature. To act in such a show, wasn't it pleasurable for them? Who would have thought that her lord was not like that at all and had no interest in bullying the weak? Weren't they practicing the devil path? Wasn't it good to do something that the devil path should do? Xu Yanyan noticed that both He Wenchao and Bailey Qingmiao had arrived at the tea house. Even the audience had arrived, yet the stage had not been set up. This would not do. She was so anxious that she blinked crazily at her lord, to the extent that her wonderful eyes became glassy. "You go for it," Wen Renhe secretly transmitted a message to Yin Hanjiang. He decided to give more orders to Yin Hanjiang in the future, so as to prevent him from feeling that, "The Lord doesn't need me anymore, so I can just die." Yin Hanjiang recalled the script given by Xu Yanyan and upon hearing his lord's command, he looked blankly at the beautiful Xu Yanyan. He had to pull apart Xu Yanyan's clothes and shove the silver tails to her chest. And do it in front of his lord. He was in a very difficult position, but this was his lord's command. You can decide for yourself. You don't have to care about Xu Yanyan's plan. Wen Renhe transmitted his instructions when he noticed Yin Hanjiang's distress. With Wen Renhe's permission, Yin Hanjiang's expression relaxed immediately and he said coldly, "Since you don't know how to be grateful, then don't blame me for being rude." With that, he picked up Xu Yanyan with one hand and threw her from the second floor, right in front of He Wenchao and Bailey Qingmiao. Xu Yanyan. He Wenchao noticed a figure falling from the sky and wanted to help, but Bailey Qingmiao was right by his side. He had just quarreled with Bailey Qingmiao about the incident with Junior Marshal Sister Lu from Shangqing sect, so he didn't want to make her angry again. Hence, even if he noticed that the figure was a woman whose face he couldn't see, he still didn't make a move. Instead, it was Bailey Qingmiao who flew forward to save the person, when she saw someone falling from the second floor. Xu Yanyan's plan went to pieces, but no matter what, she could not let Bailey Qingmiao rescue her. If a rescuing was to take place, it should be He Wenchao embracing other women right in front of Bailey Qingmiao. As a result, Xu Yanyan made up her mind and used her qi to speed up. She had to forcefully make herself fall before Bailey Qingmiao could even touch the edge of her clothes. She had also deliberately used her qi to hurt herself, pretending to have been seriously injured from her fall. Bailey Qingmiao could only catch a piece of white cloth before she noticed that the weak woman had already fallen heavily on the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood. She landed down, half knelt in front of the woman to help her up, and said worriedly, "Lady, are you all right?" When she turned her face around, it unexpectedly turned out to be an acquaintance. Bailey Qingmiao gasped, "Lady Xu." He Wenchao arrived late and saw that poor lady who had been saved just several days ago. He still had a soft spot for her and regretted in his heart that he hadn't been able to save her in time. Using the alias name of Xu Yan, Xu Yanyan was pulled into a half-hug by Bailey Qingmiao. She shed a tear in her heart. It shouldn't be like this. According to her script, she should be bullied by the guests, so that He Wenchao would not be able to stand by and watch. Then, he would come forward to help her and remove his robe to place it on the weak Xu Yanyan, whose clothes were disheveled. When Bailey Qingmiao saw that she was wearing her sweetheart's clothes, she would be blinded by jealousy and start an argument with He Wenchao. This would push He Wenchao to her side and he would then send her home. When he saw her shedding tears, he would hug her in order to comfort her. One thing would then lead to another, and wouldn't it be as easy as that? Men, ah! Why did it turn out like this? Bailey Qingmiao took out a healing pill and gently opened her jaw to feed it to the dying Xu Yanyan. Ordinary people usually found it difficult to tolerate the effect of spiritual medicine, so Bailey Qingmiao could only give Xu Yanyan some medicine to protect her heart meridian and internal organs. As for her external injuries and bone fractures, they would have to heal on their own. After taking the medicine, Xu Yanyan's pale complexion improved a lot, so she could no longer pretend to be dizzy. She opened her eyes in despair and continued to put up a facade. She then looked at Bailey Qingmiao with tears in her eyes and said, "Thank you very much, Lady Bailey." As she was falling down, Xu Yanyan had specifically protected her face. She only allowed herself to hit her forehead to have a bleeding wound, in order to maintain the image of a frail beauty. Coupled with her expression, she would look all the more lovable. Unfortunately, this expression was wasted on Bailey Qingmiao, so He Wenchao, who was standing behind Bailey Qingmiao, couldn't see it. Bailey Qingmiao grew up in Shangqing sect and was taught to fight against the strong and help the weak. On a regular day, she would throw a tantrum at He Wenchao. Previously, she had an argument with him because he had been too attentive to Xu Yanyan. However, when it came to the issues of right and wrong, there were absolutely no discrepancies. When a weak woman was hurt in front of her, Bailey Qingmiao simply would not let it be. She placed one of her arms around Xu Yanyan's waist and flew up to the second floor. She then placed Xu Yanyan on a chair and glared at Wen Renhe and Yin Hanjiang. "Was it both of you who threw her down?" Xu Yanyan no longer dared to look at her lord. So, she turned her head and pretended to cry. Wen Renhe placed down his cup and looked at Bailey Qingmiao. In the book, he had first met Bailey Qingmiao, when he had encountered an issue with his cultivation and also come across the previous leader of Shangqing sect leading the other sects to attack Shenyuan sect. He attempted to forcefully fight against them but was gravely injured and fainted at the river. He was then rescued by Bailey Qingmiao, who had been ostracized by another female cultivator. She didn't know Wen Renhe, so she thought he was just a like-minded cultivator from another sect who had been injured. Hence, she took good care of him. When Wenrenha woke up, he saw a ray of light shining on Bailey Qingniao's face. Her body seemed to be shrouded in a layer of divine light. She was just so beautiful and mysterious. His heart immediately caved in, and from then on, he would take care of this kind-hearted woman. Now, Wenrenha wanted to see how it would turn out when he met up with Bailey Qingniao again under normal circumstances, without the factor of being injured, mentally unstable, and the gratitude of having his life saved. Bailey Qingniao was so furious that her long hair started floating due to the qi she had released. Wenrenha studied her and saw that she was shrouded with faint divine light. Ha! Wenrenha blinked his eyes and used his soul force to check it, but he could still see that divine light. Each time the book described Bailey Qingniao based on Wenrenha's perspective, words such as goddess and sacred would be used. Wenrenha only regarded them as rhetorical, but who would have known that it was not just a description, but actual divine light? He then looked at Yin Hanjiang and Xu Yanyan from the corner of his eyes, but he could not see any light. The wheels in Wenrenha's head started turning. He suddenly thought that the cultivation method he had been practicing was path of slaughter. He had entered the devil path 300 years ago, and it had been due to a war. What were Bailey Qingniao's responsibilities in her previous life? She was in charge of adversity, where she was responsible for the release of diseases, wars and death in the mortal world. Bailey Qingniao was 18 years old this year, so this would mean that the divine world's heavenly tribulation happened 18 years ago. In that case, the war that had caused Wenrenha to enter the devil path 300 years ago, was led by Bailey Qingniao in her previous life. That would be equivalent to the fact that Bailey Qingniao was involved in Wenrenha's enlightenment, so would that mean that she could be considered his half-master? With this kind of karma, there would be no need for Wenrenha to repay Bailey Qingniao if she did not reincarnate before Wenrenha ascended to the divine realm. However, she just had to reincarnate and even come across Wenrenha. He was inexorably doomed to repay the gratitude for her guidance, in order to survive the heavenly tribulation. So that's what it was. The author has something to say. Xu Yanyan. Has any of you ever taken my feelings into account? Wenrenha. Never. Yin Hanjiang. Never. Xu Yanyan. Men are no good. Edited by Rose Proofreader. Talia. Chapter 4.1. Satisfying both sides. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the female lead of the novel, Bailey Qingniao's appearance was almost impeccable. She was dressed in the long goose yellow uniform dress of the female disciples of Shangqing sect. Her long hair, which was simply pulled up and tied into a bun with a common multicolored band, was adorned with fresh peach blossoms. The peach blossoms in her hair and the few loose strands of hair on the forehead gave her face a clean and refreshing look. She only wore a pair of light yellow beaded earrings, which made her face look young and beautiful. Wenrenha was attracted to Bailey Qingniao's divine light, so he didn't notice what the woman looked like at all. In the eyes of Yin Hanjiang, who was holding his sword, Bailey Qingniao, who dared to act hostile towards Wenrenha, was already considered dead. He Wenchao finally rushed upstairs. He and Bailey Qingniao had been together for more than 10 years, so no matter how beautiful she was, he was already used to it. So after coming upstairs, his attention fell directly on Xu Yanyan. He spent some money to ask the waiter to invite a doctor to check the injuries caused by her fall, and then squatted beside Xu Yanyan's chair and said, "Lady Xu, rest assured, I will get justice for you." Xu Yanyan. No way. Was she the only one who found that this Bailey Qingniao was actually very beautiful? Were all three men here blind? What more, it was already clear that Bailey Qingniao had come to seek justice. Why was he Wenchao so lively all of a sudden? Despite all the doubts in her heart, Xu Yanyan, who was extremely ambitious, did not forget her mission, to seduce He Wenchao, so she reluctantly put her pale hand in his broad palm. Her eyes were full of affection as she said, "This little girl's life is thinner than a piece of paper. It already took 3 lifetimes of luck to meet brother He today. Sister Bailey, don't hold any grudges against others just because of me. Even if you hold a grudge, you won't be able to beat them. Xu Yanyan muttered in her heart. Bailey Qingmiao was still young and was at Qi Foundation stage. He Wenchao, who was a bit older, was at the early Golden Core stage. Needless to say, Yin Hanjiang didn't even need to unsheath his sword, he could kill these two junior members of Shangqing sect with just one finger. After listening to Xu Yanyan's words, Bailey Qingmiao got angrier and felt remorseful. Today, He Wenchao was going to visit Lady Xu. He said that he and some of his sect's junior brothers met Lady Xu in a small town a few days ago and helped her. Although it was accidental, they should be responsible till the end. If they saved Lady Xu but failed to keep her safe till the end, this karma would be attributed to them and their heavenly tribulations would be harder in the future. They were supposed to come much earlier, but due to Bailey Qingmiao's jealousy, she had a quarrel with her elder martial brother about junior sister Lu, which delayed them until now. Elder martial brother was highly skilled, and he was much better than her in deducing the heavenly design. Maybe today he had been in a hurry because he vaguely felt that something was wrong. If only they had come earlier, then Lady Xu might not have. When the guilty Bailey Qingmiao heard Xu Yanyan's pitiful words, she got even angrier. She stretched her arms and a windless silver ribbon that didn't match the color of her clothes appeared. This magic weapon, which reflected the mysterious frost of the moon, was crafted by her after establishing her Qi foundation. It looked like a silver light shining in the moonlight, very beautiful. Junior sister. He Wenchao was deeply in love with Xu Yanyan, but he also cared for Bailey Qingmiao as they had been together since childhood. Seeing that his younger martial sister used her soul-bound weapon, he was afraid his martial sister would get hurt, so he rushed in front of her. His long sword came out of its sheath and floated in the air, the tip pointing towards the two men. Xu Yanyan cried, "Don't get hurt because of me." The guests in the restaurant had been scared away as soon as Yin Hanjiang threw Xu Yanyan downstairs. At this moment, only the few people involved in the confrontation were left on the second floor. Yin Hanjiang's expression sank. Since the other side was already using weapons, he would also. Hanjiang. When Renhe raised his hand and pressed down Yin Hanjiang's hand that was holding the hilt of the sword. He pressed it heavily and stopped him from killing the female lead and the male lead with a single move. Before he was found, the young Yin Hanjiang had been lying in the pile of dead bodies for several days and the corpse qi had already entered his body. No matter how much he cultivated, his limbs and bones were always frozen, and his hands were always cold. When Renhe's cultivation came from blood and war. His blood temperature was much higher than that of ordinary people. The palm wrapped around Yin Hanjiang's hand was hot, passing the heat to him. When Renhe touched him, Yin Hanjiang did not dare to move. At this moment it seemed that even the touch of a fingertip against Renhe's palm would be too daring. Yin Hanjiang's hand was very cold. He seemed to have some internal injury which should be related to his childhood experience. This was also the reason why Yin Hanjiang's cultivation advanced so slowly. The way to treat this was to find the snow flame growing in the ice fields of Wanli, as recorded in the novel. O.org. Yes, it was the snow flame that Bailey Qingmiao had nearly lost her life to find in order to help He Wenchao. When Renhe had no interest in participating in the adventures of the male lead and the female lead. Currently, he was the most powerful person in the cultivation world, and he didn't need those opportunities. However, Yin Hanjiang really needed the snow flame. He had been indifferent to Yin Hanjiang for so many years, treating him like an ordinary subordinate. If he hadn't read the book, he would have still ignored him. Recalling Yin Hanjiang's crazy and paranoid appearance after his death in the book, when Renhe's heart was moved and he couldn't help wanting to be better to Yin Hanjiang. It seems that you two are cultivating immortals with a great amount of qi, so why bother with a lowly woman? When Renhe didn't want to be Bailey Qingmiao's enemy, so he took the initiative to give them a way out. What did you say? His words only made Bailey Qingmiao angrier. She wanted to attack him, but was stopped by He Wenchao. At that moment, Bailey Qingmiao had not been abused by the plot yet. She had a pure and unsophisticated character, so she couldn't grasp the agenda of these two men. He Wenchao had experienced the world of mortals several times, and he could see that when Renha's cultivation was not low. These two people were so calm and steady, then shouldn't they already be experts at nascent soul stage? His palms were sweating as he carefully sent a message to his younger martial sister, they are not easy to deal with. I'll stop them, you go to the sect and ask for help quickly. In his heart, Bailey Qingmiao was his favorite younger martial sister. He had to protect her. Even if he died, his beautiful and lovely younger martial sister couldn't be hurt. Senior brother, seeing that her martial elder brother stopped her, Bailey Qingmiao knew that they had met an expert, she felt both afraid and grateful. The two of them thought they were secretly transmitting messages, but they did not know that the three people next to them heard them clearly due to their cultivation. Hearing the messages, Wen Renhe was puzzled and took a step back. How did the atmosphere become even more tense? How did it end up like this? How did he handle such situations in the past? It seemed that he killed. He couldn't even remember the looks of the people who had clashed with him. Fortunately, Xu Yanyan was here. As the Lord's right sect protector, she immediately understood Wen Renhe's thoughts. She dragged her body between the four of them and grabbed the silver on the table with a shaking hand. She cried, "Brother Lady Bailey, don't get hurt because of me. This master is right. I'm just a lowly woman." With that, she took the initiative to tuck the silver into her skirt and choking with tears she said, "Thank you very much for the reward, this honorable guest." During this performance, Xu Yanyan did not forget to transmit a message to Wen Renhe, "Lord, I beg you to say, I think you know the truth. For the sake of giving Shangqing sect face, I won't dispute with you too, and then leave. I am sure my performance will hook up this amorous man." Hearing this, Wen Renhe nodded and following the script said, "I think you know the truth. For the sake of giving Shangqing sect face, I won't dispute with you too." As soon as the words fell, he pulled Yin Hanjiang and disappeared. He Wenchao and Bailey Qingmiao couldn't catch up with them. "Lady Xu." He Wenchao hurriedly picked up Xu Yanyan, who could not stand because of the fracture. He was very distressed. It was his fault. He was too weak and couldn't defeat the two experts who he suspected were at nascent soul stage. He made such a miserable but strong and independent woman suffer a humiliation for him. Seeing He Wenchao holding Xu Yanyan whose legs were bleeding, Bailey Qingmiao immediately said, "I'm afraid that ordinary doctors won't be able to cure Lady Xu. I'll go back to the sect and ask Senior Brother Yao to save her." "Alright, I'll take her home first." He Wenchao nodded. After Bailey Qingmiao left, he took the weak woman to her shabby thatched house. The dilapidated house was clean and tidy. There were some delicate embroideries on the walls, enough to show that the owner was a poor but virtuous woman. He Wenchao carefully put Xu Yanyan on the bedding made of weeds. Xu Yanyan had lost too much blood and was dying. Her breath was getting weaker but she did not faint. Xu Yanyan struggled to lift her blood-stained fingertips and said softly, "Brother I am poor and humble. I should have died long ago." "You don't have to." The moment her cold fingertips touched He Wenchao's face, Xu Yanyan successfully fainted, leaving a bloodstain on his face. "Lady Xu." When He Wenchao felt Xu Yanyan's pulse, it was extremely weak. He was very anxious. He was afraid he could not wait for his younger martial sister to find younger martial brother Yao. He gritted his teeth and said, "I have sinned." Edited by Ninja Cucumber Proofreader. Talia. Chapter 4.2. Satisfying both sides. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With that he untied Xu Yanyan's clothes, and an ingot of silver fell from them. Seeing it, his heart felt even more painful and he no longer cared about the proper conduct between women and men. He put his palm on Xu Yanyan's chest and injected his qi into her, taking out a pill at the same time. It was true that ordinary people couldn't bear the power of cultivator's medicine or take it directly. But if the cultivator was willing to use his qi in a suitable power and inject it into the body, the medicine could be absorbed. During the process, the cultivator would lose some of their cultivation, so very few cultivators would waste their hard-won cultivation progress for ordinary people. Younger martial brother Yao had drugs that helped ordinary people absorb medicine and were usually taken by younger martial brothers and sisters who had just entered the sect and had failed to inject qi into their bodies. But now he couldn't wait. He Wenchao's golden core cultivation was pretty good. After stabilizing the yin and yang energy in Xu Yanyan's body, he fed her medicinal pills mouth to mouth and helped in absorbing them. In the time it took to burn an incense stick, Xu Yanyan's wounds healed and He Wenchao, who was hugging her, felt a bit relieved. It was not until then that he realized what kind of soft and warm jade he was holding in his arms, which they still hadn't come. Xu Yanyan pretended to be dizzy and transmitted a message to her subordinates, "You guys, stop Bailey Qingmiao for me. I will be done in a few minutes, don't let her find this senior brother Yao and spoil my plan. There is no need to send subordinates. I have already stopped Bailey Qingmiao." A familiar deep voice sounded in Xu Yanyan's ear. Xu Yanyan. Lord, why did you do it yourself? This subordinate didn't want to bother you, this couldn't be good. Although she was crying in her heart, Xu Yanyan calmly opened her eyes and found herself lying in He Wenchao's arms with her clothes still. She let out a light cry and blushed. On the other side, Bailey Qingmiao once again activated her weapon, the windless silver moon ribbon, with a dignified expression, confronting Wen Renhe and Yin Hanjiang. Yin Hanjing lifted a finger and the windless silver moon ribbon, Bailey Qingmiao's soul-bound weapon, obediently returned to her body and she could no longer use any qi. At this moment, Bailey Qingmiao finally understood how strong they were. She grew up in Shangqing sect and never went down the mountain to practice. She always thought that she was strong, but she never expected to meet such hidden experts among the ordinary people at the foot of the mountain. Her elder martial brother had rich experience, so he must have seen the strength of these two people back then, but was firmly determined to protect her. Elder martial brother was so kind to her that he was willing to give up his life. She always had a small temper and doubted her elder martial brother. It turned out that she had really wronged him. If you want to kill me, then go ahead. If I back out now, I will not be worthy of being a disciple of Shangqing sect. Bailey Qingmiao said firmly. When Wen Renge heard her, he thought he really didn't understand Bailey Qingmiao's brain circuit. He said peacefully, "Don't misunderstand, Miss Bailey. This lord was trying to get acquainted with you. I really need something from you." As soon as he slightly raised his hand, 3 elegant chairs appeared in the barren mountain. These 3 transparent chairs were neither stored in his storage space nor made of his qi, but they were condensed from mountain qi. At Mahayana stage, cultivators reached a state when they could communicate with heaven and earth at will. Often, they didn't use their soul-bound weapons easily but relied on the qi of heaven and earth to attack others. When Renhe made a gesture of "please" to Bailey Qingmiao, and when he saw Bailey Qingmiao sit on one of the spirit chairs trembling, he also sat on another one. Usually, he would sit first, but in front of Bailey Qingmiao, his half-master, he had to show some respect, so he could only invite her to sit first. One of the 3 chairs was for Yin Hanjiang, but he didn't sit down. He quietly stood behind Wen Renhe and didn't express any opinion. In front of Bailey Qingmiao, Wen Renhe didn't force him and said to the female lead, "Miss Bailey, you should be able to see that with our strength, there is no need to embarrass a mortal. It was just to attract your attention, that we dropped an object downstairs." Bailey Qingmiao was very angry, but the person in front of her was too strong. So she clasped her hands, restrained herself, and said, "It was a person, not an object." Was it? When Renhe moved his finger and an ant crawling on the ground was blown to Bailey Qingmiao's knee by the wind. He said indifferently, "What is the difference between the two?" The little ant was crawling on Bailey Qingmiao's leg. She picked it up with one hand, put it on the ground and said in a trembling voice, "It is not the same, but both the woman and the ant are innocent. Has Miss Bailey ever eaten bloody food in her life?" Wenrenha asked. Bailey Qingmiao didn't speak. Cultivators could only start fasting after achieving the Qi foundation stage. Afterwards they supplemented their strength by absorbing the Qi of heaven and earth. She reached the Qi foundation stage 1 year ago, and in her first 17 years, she grew up eating food. That's not the same, she could only protest weakly. You are a cultivator, so you should understand that all things in this world have the same goal, and that they have spirit in them, which is no different from human being. When Renha continued, "Do you know how many creatures can be created by the Qi of heaven and earth which is absorbed by us cultivators? Shanqing sect has been occupying Lingshan mountain for many years. Do you know how many rare and exotic animals lived in the mountain in ancient times? Why do they no longer live here? Because the humans of Shanqing sect were cultivating and seizing all of their Reiki. Lingshan mountain lost its ability to produce its innate Reiki anymore." It was too early for Bailey Qingmiao to refute what she had just heard, and it confused her mind. She felt that all of her previous ideas had been overthrown, her Qi was out of control, and her internal organs were in so much pain that she felt like she was being cut with a knife. When Renha could not watch her suffer Qi deviation, so he said, "You don't have to blame yourself for this. It was those sacrifices that helped the human race to become the pinnacle of many things. In the ancient times of gods and demons, the human race suffered a lot. Any birds, animals, spirits and plants that could be used by the human race were consumed as food. The human body could be used to refine weapons and absorb Reiki. It is just a matter of luck that the human race is superior now." After hearing this, Bailey Qingmiao's expression became a little better. His words seemed to have cleared the confusion in her heart, leaving her mind quite calm. She closed her eyes and meditated. A quarter of an hour later she opened her eyes, got up and saluted Wenrenha, "Thank you for your advice." Wenrenha waved his hand. "It's just a small thing. I just casually mentioned some of the ways of heaven. You could understand it, because you were born to cultivate the merciless path. When you practice in the future, don't deviate from the right path." Bailey Qingmiao had just grasped the truth of heaven and earth, and her eyes were completely different from those of the innocent girl from before. The eyes under her long eyelashes were merciless yet compassionate. Her eyes seemed to fall on the ant, as if she didn't see anything. Wenrenha was very satisfied with this, but in the blink of an eye, Bailey Qingmiao's eyes brightened again, and she said as if speaking to herself, "Elder Martial Brother and Lady Shu are still waiting for the medicine." The eyes of the goddess brightened again and the appearance of a girl in love was restored. "Don't worry, that woman will be fine," Wenrenha said. "I came to you because I need you to get something for me. Elder just instructed me on the ways of heaven and I am very grateful. If I can help this elder, I will certainly do anything," Bailey Qingmiao said. "I want the snow flame to heal an old wound of my subordinates." "Friends," Wenrenha said. Yin Hanjiang was slightly surprised and looked at Wenrenha. "I heard from my master that the snow flame was born in the ice field of Wanli, but in thousands of years there has been no trace of it. Also, it's a matter of life or death for cultivators below the golden core stage to enter the ice field of Wanli. These elders have such a high level of cultivation, how can Bailey help this elder?" Bailey Qingmiao asked puzzled. Wenrenha. "The snow flame is an opportunity given to you by heaven, so no one else can have it. We can only use it with your permission. Everything has its own destiny, so not everything can be obtained through advanced cultivation. In fact, as long as they followed Bailey Qingmiao, they could rob her after she got the snow flame, which was also the way of the merciless path. However, when Renha didn't want to do such despicable things, like seizing other people's opportunities, he just needed to slightly alter them. I can help you cultivate and become a god, and give you what you want in exchange for the snow flame. When Renha came up with such a way to repay his master's kindness and helping Hanjiang in order to satisfy both sides. He nodded secretly at his own wit, but he didn't know that Yin Hanjiang, who stood behind him, had slightly red eyes. Yin Hanjiang bowed his head to not let others see his eyes and said in a hoarse voice, "Venerable." Hearing that, Wenrenha cut off Yin Hanjiang's words with his hand covered by a long black sleeve embroidered with golden threads, and said, "What I am willing to give you, you must not refuse." Edited by Ninja Cucumber Proofreader. Talia. Chapter 5.1. Praise the Lord. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wenrenha was a merciless person, and in the book he was described as a person indifferent to the world. He was only obedient to Bailey Qingmiao, and for her he would pluck the stars and the moon from the sky. Such a personality attracted countless fans to him, so whenever there was a scene where he was alone with Bailey Qingmiao, the readers would be enthralled and would fangirl. One of the most classic scenes was the wedding night of He Wenchao and the leader of Xiling Pavilion. Bailey Qingmiao, who was seriously injured and locked up, was accompanied by Wenrenha. She looked up at the star-studded sky and at the cowherd and Vega, separated by the Milky Way, saying, "Why would they separate such a good pair of lovers?" As she spoke, a tear streaked across her pale face. She was once a girl with clear eyes and full of smiles, but that innocence had long disappeared. Although cultivators hardly grew older physically after they built their chi foundation, their mentality would be more mature. Even though she looked 18 years old, Bailey Qingmiao's mind was already very old. Hearing this, Wenrenha raised his hand, covered Bailey Qingmiao's eyes and said, "Before I become a god, don't look at the stars." Why? Bailey Qingmiao didn't understand. According to legends, after a cultivator becomes a god, they can change the galaxy and universe at will. "I will bring the Vega star from the other end of the Milky Way." Bailey Qingmiao was amused by him, so she nodded and replied, "Then, I won't look at the sky again until you become a god." Ren Wenha died before he could become a god, but he kept his promise to Bailey Qingmiao. Bailey Qingmiao was able to find her divinity, relying on the arrangements made by Wenrenha while he was alive. When she merged with her divinity, the heaven and the earth trembled, the stars changed, and the cowherd and Vega would be drawn close together. The power unleashed by the change of the star constellation instantly turned a continent into an ocean. The power of the innate goddess was just so immense. When the goddess of disaster returned to her throne, the world was in chaos. When the female lead returned to her senses and saw that she had destroyed a continent, she remembered her elder martial brother's daily teachings. In the previous life she didn't want to become a goddess and disturb the stars, so she gave up her divinity. However, the cowherd and Vega did not return to their original positions and stayed together, just like a man and a woman who finally walked together. With regard to this plot, readers all talked crazily about how Ren Wenha loved the female lead even after his death, saying that if he wanted to spoil someone, he would really consider all aspects, and would not let the other side suffer any grievance. Even if he had died, he still accompanied her to her last moment. Wenrenha didn't feel anything when he read that plot and the readers' comments, because he knew how unaffectionate he was. Wenrenha's loyal subordinates in Shenyuan's sect were countless and he had never taken it to heart. He knew that this loyalty was based on his ability to crush people. If he was replaced by another powerful person, these people would also be loyal to them. This loyalty was not directed toward Wenrenha, but toward the power of a Mahayana stage cultivator. As for family relationships, as soon as he was enlightened, he had already let go. 300 years had already passed, and there was no one close to him in this world. His feelings for Bailey Qingmiao were just the threads of heaven's karma. He was alone and he would never have any attachment to the world neither now nor after his death. Only after reading the book did he have a different feeling for Yin Hanjiang. He saved Yin Hanjiang's life, nurtured him, and taught him reason. After his death, avenging him and fulfilling his last wish was only natural for Yin Hanjiang. Even if he was torn to pieces, he felt it was reasonable for Wenrenha's sake. Unluckily, Yin Hanjiang chose that kind of tragic way to show his loyalty to Wenrenha. When Wenrenha read the book, he did not equate Yin Hanjiang with Ghost Face at first. When the truth was revealed and the female lead saw the ghost mask wrapped in Yin Hanjiang's package, it shocked not only Bailey Qingmiao, but also Wen Renhe, who was reading the book. In this section of the book, there was a woman who had a magic weapon that allowed her to change her appearance without being discovered. She turned into Bailey Qingmiao in order to seduce He Wenchao and was caught red-handed by Yin Hanjiang. Without the halo of the female lead, she was naturally refined into a lamp. Yin Hanjiang took off his ghost mask, went to the tomb of his lord and lit the everlasting lamp. He walked inside the tomb, hugged the dark robe with a dark golden pattern, and closed his eyes happily and peacefully. That paragraph was shocking. It was as if Yin Hanjiang had brought the clothes to smell that person's scent before he self-exploded. Unexpectedly, the tracking device that Yin Hanjiang had put on the female lead lit up at this moment, and he saw that the female lead was alive. Yin Hanjiang stared at the picture that emerged in the air, tilted his head and rubbed it against Wen Renhe's clothes. He then folded them carefully and placed them smoothly on the tomb. He walked out of the tomb quietly and crushed the everlasting lamp directly without protecting his palm with qi. With a wave of his long arm, the glass lamp collided with the marble floor beside him. The lamp broke, and the oil slowly spilled on the ground. Ha 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 ha. Yin Hanjiang looked at his burned palm and suddenly smiled and laughed. He covered his mouth, his voice painful and oppressive, as if he was using all his strength to restrain his feelings. He lowered his head deeply until the stars appeared in the sky. At the darkest moment before dawn, Yin Hanjiang raised his head, picked up the ghost mask and put it on his face. Behind the mask, he made a sound of gnashing his teeth. Bailey Qingmiao. The readers of this scene felt creepy, but they had this unspeakable feeling that he was the hidden protagonist of the story. He could accept that Yin Hanjiang died for him, but he could not understand why he went crazy because of him. From extreme calmness to extreme madness, what kind of pain did one have to experience? Yin Hanjiang's face was rubbing against his robe, as if he was rubbing against his heart. When his eyes shifted from the book to Yin Hanjiang, for the first time he felt that what he had done for this subordinate was not enough to justify such a sincere response, so he wanted to be better to him. Xu Yanyan no longer planned to suck He Wenchao into a dry corpse, but used her secret methods to help He Wenchao improve his cultivation, so it was no longer necessary to use the snow flame for him, but only to treat Yin Hanjiang. Being the sect leader of Xianyuan demonic sect for many years, he had collected a lot of goods over the years. With a turn of his sleeve, he gave Bailey Qingmiao some materials, pills and magic weapons suitable for her realm, as well as a fire feather cloak to withstand the cold in the ice field of Wanli and prevent the female lead from freezing to death. It's not appropriate. Bailey Qingmiao looked at the items that were quickly piled up into a hill, blushed and waved her hands to refuse. Wen Renhe also gave her a simple hairpin, which was also a magic weapon that could store things, so she could put the things he gave her inside. He didn't give Bailey Qingmiao a chance to refuse and directly left with Yin Hanjiang. Diovi Ko Bailey Qingmiao, with a hairpin in her hands, looked at the place where they had disappeared. After shaking her head for a while, she stamped her foot and exclaimed, "Senior brother, Miss Xu." She quickly collected the treasures, stuffed the jade hairpin into her sleeve and slowly flew to the sect. The disciples of Shangqing's sect who went down the mountain had a talisman for calling for help. All disciples of Shangqing's sect in the vicinity would come to help. In fact, Bailey Qingmiao could ask for help in this way, but it was a life-saving talisman that could only be used in life-threatening situations, so it couldn't be used at will. If she really used this talisman and alarmed nearby members of the sect and it wasn't an emergency, it would only make the elder martial brothers and sisters dissatisfied. Only after reaching nascent soul stage could they send special messages. Bailey Qingmiao hadn't reached this stage yet, so she could only climb the mountain. On the other side, Xu Yanyan was sleeping flushed on the thatched bed, revealing a fragrant shoulder. He Wenchao, who was sitting on the edge of the bed, was stunned, then he pulled the simple quilt to cover her, which awakened Xu Yanyan. Xu Yanyan opened her eyes and blushed at the sight of He Wenchao. She grabbed her clothes, wrapped herself up casually and pinched her hands nervously before she said softly, "Master, he doesn't have to worry about it. I know you and Miss Bailey are in love, it was just an accident. At this time, I was injured, and Master, he was only trying to help me heal." He Wenchao was clear in his heart. He looked at Xu Yanyan with a trace of pity. "I'll buy you a house." "It's too shabby to live here," He Wenchao said dryly. Xu Yanyan scolded two smelly men in her heart and shook her head with a light smile on her face. "Is Master he regarding me as a concubine or a person who sells her body? If I wanted to sell myself for money, why wait until now?" He Wenchao froze again. Edited by Ninja Proofreader. Talia. Chapter 5.2. Praise the Lord. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I am poor and humble, and I don't care what other people think of me. But how can you who is as bright as the moon try to buy happiness with money? Xu Yanyan turned around and looked at He Wenchao sadly. She didn't accept money, not only because of her own integrity, but also because of her heartache for He Wenchao. How considerate she was. "But after all, I am just a common girl." He Wenchao reached out his hand and helped Xu Yanyan put a strand of her undone hair behind her ear. He also inadvertently touched her red cheek, making his heart tremble again. Xu Yanyan said with a gentle smile, "Isn't it often said in story books that saving a life should be reciprocated with the body? Master, he is a great hero, and maybe this concubine should also follow this principle to repay him." Her words gradually soothed He Wenchao's guilt. He thought that he had helped Miss Xu many times, but this woman had no ability and could only repay him in this way. Moreover, she was already in his arms and trusted him wholeheartedly. No man could resist this. But what should he do with his junior sister Bailey Qingmiao? But things having turned out like this, wasn't it because his sister Bailey hadn't come back for a long time? If she had came back earlier, he would not have had to act so improper in order to save her. The more He Wenchao thought about it, the more he felt that he was right, except that he didn't know how to explain it to his beloved younger martial sister. He was fond of Bailey Qingmiao, and there were no secrets between them. He Wenchao took care of Bailey Qingmiao since she was 7 or 8 years old. He watched Bailey Qingmiao grow from a little girl with baby fat to such a beautiful girl, and his feelings were not to be compared with those for Xu Yanyan. Xu Yanyan didn't want to interfere in other people's feelings either. She put her soft hand on He Wenchao's shoulder and said understanding, "Don't worry, you will know it, I will know it, but no one else will know." Yeah, no one else would know, right? Miss Xu looked like a clever girl, she would understand. He Wenchao's guilt had completely dispersed as he hugged Xu Yanyan. Afterwards Xu Yanyan put on her clothes and fell into a deep sleep. She tossed and turned and looked very exhausted. When He Wenchao looked at her sleeping face, he felt some pity for her. After staying for a while, He Wenchao remembered that he had accidentally injected his qi. His Shifu often reminded his disciples that they should not practice with others before reaching nascent soul stage, because it would be easy to destroy their own cultivation. He Wenchao hurriedly checked his situation, but saw that his skill not only had not decreased but had even increased a lot, from the 7th layer to the 9th layer of golden core. Xu Yanyan was a master at the 6th layer of void stage. Cultivating by using such methods, it was easy for her to help a young generation at the golden core stage to improve their strength. However, she had also absorbed the power of thunder and fire and that mysterious power from He Wenchao's body, so she had gained a lot of benefits. She was just waiting for He Wenchao to leave before she started cultivating. Why did his cultivation increase? He Wenchao was very puzzled. He looked at Xu Yanyan and remembered that he had read a book about dual cultivation in the library. At that time, when he found that he had fallen in love with his younger martial sister, he went to search for a method for dual cultivation. That book also said that before reaching nascent soul stage dual cultivation was not allowed, except for people with two kinds of constitution, the body of 9 yin and the body of 9 yang. If a woman with a body of 9 yin would dual cultivate, even if she was just an ordinary person, she would still help the other person improve their strength, which had many advantages. Did Miss Shu have a 9 yin body constitution? While He Wenchao was absorbed in thoughts, Bailey Qingyao finally arrived with Elder Martial Brother Yao. She gasped as she said, "Elder Martial Brother, I'm sorry I'm late." He Wenchao gently touched her head and said, "Don't worry, younger Martial Sister. Miss Shu is all right. I'd like to apologize to Elder Martial Brother Yao for his wasted trip." Elder Martial Brother Yao looked at Shu Yanyan, whose face was just like peaches and plums, sleeping on the bed, and a trace of doubt rose in his heart as he asked, "How did she recover?" He Wenchao didn't want him to check Miss Shu's specific situation, so he said in a low voice, "It's not convenient to talk here. Let's talk about it when we go out." When the three of them left the thatched hut, He Wenchao said that the situation had been urgent and that Shu Yanyan had almost died from vomiting blood, so he had helped her take some medicine used by cultivators and took out the medicine bottle that was missing one pill as proof. Can ordinary people withstand this kind of medicine? Elder Martial Brother Yao smelled the medicine bottle and said, "This is the pill that can only be used at Qi Foundation stage. Ordinary people's meridians can't stand such a powerful aura. After taking this pill they will die from their meridians breaking." "I used my soul force to help her absorb it," He Wenchao said simply. But, Yao Wendan recalled the steps of absorbing the pill. His main direction of cultivation was pill refining, and naturally, he knew that it was necessary to have skin-to-skin contact. But what? Bailey Qingyao simply looked at Yao Wendan. She was still young and hadn't learned this yet. He Wenchao stared at Yao Wendan. Yao Wendan got his hint and said, "I was just worried that my brother didn't understand the matter of refining medicine, but hasn't the treatment already taken place? Now that Miss Shu has recovered, there is no reason to worry." Bailey Qingyao was relieved and said she would go to see Miss Shu. He Wenchao said that it was no longer a critical moment now, and it was no longer proper to let single men and women stay alone together, so he let Bailey Qingyao go on her own. As soon as she entered the room, Yao Wendan raised his eyebrows and jabbed He Wenchao with his elbow, before giving him a mischievous smile. "Martial brother, have you done something wicked?" He Wenchao said in a righteous tone, "There are priorities in regards to this matter, and I am also an expedient." At that time, I covered my eyes. He behaved so righteous that Yao Wendan said with doubt, "Then why didn't you tell your younger martial sister just now?" He Wenchao sighed and shook his head. "It's not like you don't know younger martial sister's temperament. When younger martial sister Lu came to ask me questions about cultivation, she already made a fuss. I, as elder martial brother, have the obligation to help each younger martial brother and sister in cultivation when master is too busy. I even taught you the basic mental skill, how can I not help younger martial sister Lu?" "That is also true," Yao Wendan said. "Sister Bailey is good at everything. She is just a big vinegar jar. That's right, and it is not good for Miss Shu to speak of it. It is better to stop here. Human life was at stake, so it was also a virtue for me to do so," He Wenchao said. Yao Wendan believed in He Wenchao's words, and after Bailey Qingyao made sure that Shu Yanyan was all right, they went back to the sect. After they left, Shu Yanyan got up rubbing her skin, kicked the thatched bed and said angrily, "This thatched bed is too staging, it's too uncomfortable to sleep. Why didn't you just tell Bailey Qingyao about you and He Wenchao?" The voice sounded in the thatched hut. When Shu Yanyan looked up, she saw her lord had appeared in the room, so she smiled. "Lord, you are a man of iron blood. You only see beauties as rocks, so how can you understand the thoughts of those dignified hypocrites? When they are in bed for free they say sweet words, but when they put on their clothes and turn around they don't even recognize people anymore. If I dare to say anything now, He Wenchao will turn me into a monster the next day and push everything on me." After hearing this, Wen Renhe thought it was true. It was written in the book that He Wenchao insisted that Shu Yanyan had captured him. How could he defeat the right sect protector of the demonic sect? Then when will you say it? Wen Renha asked. He wanted Bailey Qingmiao to see He Wenchao's true face as soon as possible, so that she could start cultivating the merciless path and become a goddess as soon as possible. Only after she successfully integrated with her divinity, would the grace of Wen Renha's master be paid off. I have to wait for a while, Xu Yanyan said, leaning lazily against the wall. After He Wenchao returns to the sect, he will come back to me in a few days. After tasting it once, which man can stop thinking about it? Besides, I can help him improve his cultivation. After another visit or two, there will be more. If the first time was forced, were the second, third and fourth time also forced? Then, even if he tries, he will not be able to deny what happened. She frowned slightly and said, but doesn't the Lord want me to win him over, go fishing for a long time, and inquire about news of the upcoming battle between the sections? Well, when Renha nodded, that needs to be done too, but it's better if Bailey Qingmiao changes her heart, betrays her sect and starts cultivating her merciless path as soon as possible. Ha! Xu Yanyan was puzzled. What did the Lord mean? If he wanted to see Bailey Qingmiao betray her sect and turn to the devil path, or even try to get her in his grip, why should she still cultivate the merciless way? Just do it, said Wen Renha. Then I have to find some subordinates to distract Bailey Qingmiao and provide opportunities for He Wenchao. Every time they go down the mountain, they stick together, so it's hard to find opportunities, Xu Yanyan said. No need, I will distract Bailey Qingmiao for a while, replied Wen Renha. You are going to distract her yourself? Xu Yanyan's face became stiff. Is there a problem? Hearing that, Wen Renha raised an eyebrow. How could there be? Xu Yanyan said with a dry smile. Seeing that she did not believe Wen Renha, Yin Hanjiang said angrily, the Lord ordered Bailey Qingmiao to get the snow flame. It will not only help us get the treasure, but also make it convenient for you to lure He Wenchao away from Shangqing sect. It is like killing two birds with one arrow. I see. Xu Yanyan stood in awe, kneeled down on one knee and said, the Lord is wise. Wen Renha nodded with a wooden face. Edited by Ninja Proofreader. Talia. Chapter 6.1. Ice Field of Wanli. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bailey Qingmiao took the pile of treasures and returned to the sect to cultivate for the night, but she felt uneasy for some reason. She found that her cultivation had increased from the second to the seventh layer of Qi foundation. She believed that this was all due to the guidance of the senior. The education she received since childhood taught Bailey Qingmiao that even the grace of a drop of water should be repaid and that she should not sit back and enjoy her success. So she requested to see her master and told her that she wanted to go down the mountain to gain experience. Bailey Qingmiao's master Elder Qing Rong was a female cultivator. Most of the female disciples in Shangqing sect were under her tutelage. Shangqing sect didn't prohibit dual cultivation. They just warned all disciples that dual cultivation should only be practiced after reaching nascent soul stage. It gave hope to those students whose state of mind was uncertain, and made them work harder. Not to mention that when cultivators entered the nascent soul stage, their state of mind would also enter another realm. The feelings of immature infatuations would be weakened and only the true feelings would remain, which would also help the students see their hearts clearly, so that they would not hurt themselves when their cultivation was still low. Shangqing sect had always believed that a restriction was better than a ban. Instead of forbidding the disciples to fall in love with each other secretly, it was better to give priority to guidance which would not stimulate the rebellious mentality of the disciples. The effect of this sect rule was good. Some disciples, in order to be honest with their sweethearts, worked hard to advance in their cultivation. The atmosphere in the whole sect was therefore positive. When Elder Qing Rong heard that her favorite little disciple was determined to go out to practice alone, she smiled with relief, patted Bailey Qingmiao's palm and said, I was worried that you would be reluctant to leave your elder martial brother, and wouldn't go out alone. Ah, Shifu, Bailey Qingmiao blushed and hugged Elder Qing Rong's arm. When Elder Qing Rong saw that her little apprentice finally realized it, she felt very relieved and nodded. It's good to be motivated. You're a rare genius. If I hadn't stopped you, because I didn't want you to build your foundation too early, I'm afraid you would have reached Qi Foundation stage when you were 12 or 13 years old. After reaching Qi Foundation, your body wouldn't have grown up until you reached nascent soul stage. Would you like practicing for 100 years looking like a 12 or 13-year-old? Bailey Qingmiao was a little embarrassed. She had been young at that time and didn't understand anything. If she looked like a 12 or 13 years old, it would be terrible for her elder material brother to guide her like a father with a daughter. Elder Qing Rong told Bailey Qingmiao not to go to too dangerous places after going down the mountain. In case of a critical situation, she should immediately summon help. She should observe more and not try to be brave. After a lot of detailed instructions, she was given a self-defense weapon, which could protect its master from the attack of a spirit transformation stage cultivator. When she felt that there was no detail left to mention, she asked Bailey Qingmiao to go to the Deacon Hall with her token to register. There were many disciples in Shangqing sect and it was necessary to have a clear record of everything. Bailey Qingmiao's experience should usually take between half a year and a year. When it expired, the elders of the sect would try to find her whereabouts, which also gave some kind of protection to the disciples of the sect. As the senior disciple, He Wenchao also had a position in the Deacon Hall. So when it was his turn to take over the token brought by Bailey Qingmiao, he held it for a moment. Junior Marshal Sister, are you going down the mountain alone? Yes, I can't always be a small tail behind my brother, Bailey Qingmiao said with a smile. I want to advance to nascent soul stage as soon as possible and kill demons side by side with my elder martial brother, defend the righteous path, ward off the evil, and gain a good reputation in the cultivation word. Is that so? That's good, that's good. He Wenchao, who had a spring dream all night, was in a trance. His mind was blank. When he saw his junior martial sister, he felt a little guilty, so when he heard that she was going down the mountain, he felt a bit more relaxed. Bailey Qingmiao did not notice that He Wenchao was absent-minded. After she registered, she lit up her soul lamp. This was what the disciples had to do when they went down the mountain. In case of a misfortune on the way, the soul lamp would go out, and the upper fraction of Shangqing sect would know her situation immediately. After bidding farewell to her senior brother, Bailey Qingmiao went down the mountain and came to the restaurant where she had met Wen Renhe and the others before. Wen Renhe had made an agreement with Bailey Qingmiao not long ago. Seeing her coming in, he nodded slightly and said, "You go first, we will arrive later." With Bailey Qingmiao's speed it would take at least 7 days to reach the ice field of Wanli, but only 2 hours for Yin Hanjiang and merely a quarter of an hour for Wen Renhe. These items still have to be returned to this elder, I don't deserve them. Bailey Qingmiao took out the storage hairpin and put it on the table. I still have the fire feather cloak in case I get hurt in the ice field of Wanli. With the guidance of senior my ability has greatly increased, which has greatly benefited me. It's only natural to work for senior to repay it, so I can't accept anything more. Wen Renhe raised his eyebrows. Everything has a cause and effect. I gave it to you for a reason, you are now receiving the retribution. It will not increase your involvement, rest assured. Ah! Bailey Qingmiao was slightly surprised. Do I have a karma relationship with this senior? But I grew up in Shangqing sect and have never seen you before. Karma may not be in this life, or in you, or even in your previous life, it is in the blood, Wen Renhe said. I will not only give you these things, but also help you cultivate, until you become a deity, and help you fulfill all your wishes. Bailey Qingmiao pulled at her belt and said shyly, becoming a deity, I don't even dare to think about it, but if I need to have a wish, I want to reach the nascent soul stage as soon as possible, so I can. She didn't say the second half of the sentence, but one could guess what she meant when they heard her. Wen Renha swallowed a mouthful of tea without the slightest change in his expression and then waved his hand. Go quickly, we will meet at the entrance of the ice field of Wanli in 7 days. All right. Bailey Qingmiao left the restaurant, the hairpin still on the table. After she left, Yan Hanjiang held his sword in the air and a simple magic array appeared to protect the two of them. The outsiders didn't seem to be able to hear them and were still drinking tea, chatting and eating, and they could move freely within the array. Wen Renha frowned and asked, "What's your wish?" "This subordinate is the sword of the Lord. If the sword is present, until this sword breaks, master will not die," Yan Hanjiang said. He said it instinctively without blinking an eye or even thinking, as if this phrase had been repeated in his mind countless times and become an obsession. "You're really boring," Xu Yanyan said, coming out of the corner and leaning lazily on Yin Hanjiang's shoulder. "Great power, immense strength, cute and charming men, women, which of those things is not desirable?" "Isn't that right, my lord?" Wen Renha's face was expressionless. "Never thought about it." Xu Yanyan. Wen Renha and Yin Hanjiang were like two iron bumps, which reminded Xu Yanyan of some unpleasant memories. She still remembered that more than 80 years ago, Wen Renha took Yin Hanjiang to the main temple of Shenyuan sect. Wen Renha singled out the old patriarch and killed the other person after 3 days and nights of fighting. Yin Hanjiang always protected him during his tribulation and did not allow anyone to come near him. Yin Hanjiang was only at the first layer of spirit transformation stage, but the sword in his hand was a spiritual sword. He merged his qi with the qi of the sword forcibly, and suddenly gained terrible power. In the main temple several experts at the void stage did not dare step forward. But cultivators didn't just fight head-on, they had a lot of ways. Yuan Tanzhu asked Xu Yanyan to seduce Yin Hanjiang. She did not rely solely on her appearance to seduce him. With her power, cultivators at the spirit transformation stage in Bello, men, women, and children would become Xu Yanyan's subjects. It was also hard for male cultivators above the spirit transformation stage to resist, and they were also easy to deal with. So Xu Yanyan confidently descended to the ground and got her teeth knocked out by Yin Hanjiang. More than a year later, she still couldn't speak clearly. Until she heard that when Renha engaged the original talents of Shenyuan sect again, she did not dare to mend her wound. In that war, Xu Yanyan was afraid of Wen Renha and Yin Hanjiang, for they were free of emotions. When Wen Renha killed, seeing a beautiful woman, he did not distinguish between a man and a woman. As for Yin Hanjiang, she actually felt from the bottom of her heart that he was just a cold sword, without eyes or heart. He didn't care whether it was a man, a woman, or an animal in front of him, he only cared about Wen Renha. In Yin Hanjiang world there was only the distinction between Wen Renha and the rest of the world. Xu Yanyan was from the outside. Over the past 80 years, every time Xu Yanyan saw Yin Hanjiang, she had a toothache, and this man almost became her heart demon. But she was a courageous and brave woman, how could she bear a grudge for such a trivial matter? Edited by Ninja Proofreader. Talia.